How can the church reach out to people who have a criminal background while still protecting the safety of the church?
When anybody asks you, are you a Democrat or a Republican? As a Christian, your answer should be, name the issue. Tens of thousands of gays and lesbians, and they're yelling that the church is the enemy.
Well, hello everybody. We're at Southeastern University. This is Tony Campolo. I'm Mark Lowry. This is Saturdays with Mark and Tony. And we're in Lakeland, Florida at this wonderful university that is allowing us to come here and tape our shows. The 8th season of Saturdays with Mark and Tony.
The school is about 3,000 students, growing like wildfire.
And they're spoiled brats.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Their food, when I was in college, whatever they plopped on your plate is what you ate. They've got a complete cafeteria and buffets and dessert areas and so many options.
Yes, it's terrible.
We never got an option.
How can you develop...
Our option was eat or starve.
How do you develop a sensitivity for the poor and the oppressed
No.
when you're eating in that cafeteria?
And this is the social class we have in here today. A lot of them.
Social work major is a big major here. How many majors do you have in this department? Do you have any idea? No, you don't. You just kind of walk in, sleep through it, and...
Well, no, I just kind of picked one I liked and kind of stuck with it.
Oh,
now.
okay.
Tell us your name and where you're from.
I'm Samantha Bachman. I'm from Albany, Oregon.
And Tony...
Oregon. Albany, Oregon. Now that is far away from here.
How did you choose Southeastern?
Yes, how did you come here?
My dad is a home missionary through the Assemblies of God, and I wanted to be a social work major, and there's only 2 Assemblies of God colleges that offer it, which was Evangel in Missouri or Florida. So kind of made it easy.
Here it is, yeah.
And you're a social
work major.
Work major.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the question you asked earlier.
Well, before that, what kind of social work would you like to go into? I mean, there's casework, there's psychiatric social work, there's community organizational work.
I'd love to go into marriage and family counseling.
Mm-hmm. So that would be personal counseling stuff, yeah. Where will you go from here? Do you have any idea where you might go for graduate studies?
I'm hoping to go directly into graduate studies at University of Central Florida.
Mm-hmm. Good,
So.
good. Well, I was going to ask a very simple question of you as a social work major, and that is, we're expecting that in the next year, not in the far distant future, but within the next year, there will be a 30% cut in funding for social services in this country. You know, what does that do to you? How does it make you feel? What are you thinking about in light of that reality? What does it mean to you?
As a social work major, it adds a huge amount of stress. I'm a junior going into my internship next year, and we've always kind of been told that social services is kind of a guaranteed job just because there's always going to be things wrong with society. But as cuts are increasing, it's creating stress on people already in the field because their caseloads are growing as they're cutting more jobs, and stresses of people entering the field because they're requiring years of experience for entry-level jobs that we once were expected that we could go right into, and since we're new students, we don't have that experience.
What I expect will happen, and I'm pretty sure this will happen, is, and not that casework loads will get heavy, but in entire areas of social work will be cut out. Certain services to the elderly will just be curtailed. It won't be that those who are working with the elderly will get more cases to work with fewer workers to do it. They've just cut out the field completely. I know they're doing that in several states with certain forms of child services, and that bodes disastrously for the future. Now, here's the suggestion. It's about time that the church steps up to the plate. And I think it's time for somebody like you and a school like this to really start thinking creatively, saying, hey, here's a church, they have a minister of music, they have a youth worker, why not have a social work major? Why not have a social ministry? A place where the church needs to step in immediately, for instance, is in taking care of people coming out of jail. A social worker that could, in fact, facilitate getting people coming out of jail. And that's a lot of people right now.
That's a question that was come up. How can the church reach out to people who have a criminal background, like example, child molesters, while still protecting the safety of the church?
Well,
that's maybe a different question than what you're bringing up.
Yeah, well, it's kind of related. It seems to me that the church has to, in fact, say, Our job is to restore people, to restore people whose lives have gotten messed up. That's part of our task. Jesus was into the ministry of reconciliation, of restoration. We must be in that. There are churches that are beginning now to develop ministries. There's former mayor of Philadelphia. His name is Wilson Good, African-American, large city. He's working out of a church, developing what he calls the Amici ministry. I don't know what that means, but Amici ministry is this. He's a full-time guy who's raising financial support for himself and for his office. And what he does is he finds African-American men to mentor boys whose fathers are away at prison. And it's working very, very well to keep these kids from falling into the same delinquent patterns that their fathers are into. But it may be that you will have to go in and start your own little ministry, raise your own financial support, and begin to understand yourself not so much as a government worker, as a missionary operating out of a church. That may be it.
Right.
Do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
I think my main question is, I watched a podcast previously about how you're referring to the church and how it tends to separate itself by political parties. And the Democratic Party tends to lean itself towards helping the impoverished and the welfare of society. How, as someone who has a strong faith in the church, how can they adopt those type of beliefs, but not necessarily having to align themselves with the more controversial topics such as gay adoptions and abortion and all those sorts of things?
Well, let me just say off the bat that when anybody asks you, are you a Democrat or a Republican? As a Christian, your answer should be, name the issue. Because there are some issues that the Republicans will come out looking more Christian on. I mean, if you say which party most agrees with Scripture on this particular issue, I think the Republicans would come out with some, and the Democrats would come out with some. And I think that the great danger and the evil of our time is for the church to get married to one party or another. And I think the evangelical church has married the Republican Party, which is very, very bad. And sometimes on issues where we think we're doing the right thing, we don't. Let me give you a good example. Proposition 8 in California, very controversial issue. Let's talk about controversial. This was, are we going to ban same-gender marriage, homosexual marriage? This would be an issue that you're dealing with. Well, you know, the evangelical church got all hot and bothered. They raised $40 million, spent it on publicity, television ads, etc. They brought in 10,000 people into the state from outside to go door to door, not to talk about Jesus, which would have been a great thing to do, but to deal with this issue, you know, which means that we're more concerned about this issue than about Jesus. When it's, I mean, we raise $40 million on Proposition 8, get 10,000 people to come in. We can do that for Proposition 8. Now, when it was all over, as a sociologist, I would ask this question. The evangelicals said, we won. Right? What did we win? Did Harry and John not get in bed that night? Hey, Proposition 8 was passed. It means that gay marriage is no longer legitimate. So we're not going to. Did that happen? Did Mary and Jane, who were married, say, I guess that ends our relationship? Proposition 8? No, none of that changed. You say, so it didn't change gay and lesbian behavior at all. Oh, you're wrong. It did change gay and lesbian behavior. On the streets of L.A., on the streets of San Francisco, on the streets of Chicago, the streets of New York, the streets of Washington, the streets of every major city in this country, tens of thousands of gays and lesbians were out on the streets marching, and they're yelling that the church is the enemy, that the Bible is a book of oppression, and that Jesus is not their friend, none of which is true.